other than that.
Yeah.
So I sent you just a quick list of questions too, Travis. I think this one will be a little more free-flowing than the previous one because you're going to have a story to tell, and we might, say, "Whoa, what was that? You got grass in your what?" Okay, let's hear about that. So,
oh man, my inbox.
So this one might. I know. I've watched like 5 or 6 videos already from Unbound, specifically the mud section, and it was just incredible. I thought, oh my God, what?
Yeah, I had a GoPro on the front, just trying to get some video that would be like cool B-roll maybe that we could, nobody wants to watch a 10-hour, however long it would have taken me. But so I just turned it on, like we got to the cattle pen section, so I turned it on before that and like thought that would be kind of cool. And I think I got like 3 videos, one of yelling at people at the train, that before the whole screen is just caked in mud.
Yeah, just absolutely obscured. Yeah.
I said something to my wife Lauren, who was there, and Michelle, said, "Oh, I think I got some really cool video at least, and that'll be good." And they were like, "Are you sure? Because when you came into the SAG, that screen was just caked in mud." Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
Could no longer recognize it as a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and get the show going. I do have a meeting right on the heels of this one, and I'm sure that you got stuff to do too.
Mm-hmm. No, we don't, Fatty. We're just going to hang out.
No, I was talking about Travis. I wasn't talking about you.
We're just going to hang out. Travis and me, we planned on just chilling, hanging, talking chains. So, okay.
All right, I am recording in Audition, and we are recording in Riverside.
Okay, and we're going to do this like we did last time, Travis, where we just record this will be the show, too. We're going to record everything here. Just works a little bit easier that way. Okay, this is the follow-up to the Travis Unbound project in the countdown here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Okay. You got lines there, Fatty, too? You all ready?
I am.
Okay. This is the Marginal Gains podcast, the show that makes a big deal about the little things and how those little things can be a big deal. We are presented by Silca, pumps, wax chains, aero socks, 3D printed tools, just some of what that company can do for you.
Yeah, and I am Eldon Nelson. I am known as Fatty. Marginal Gains is also brought to you by Shimano. Shimano is known for making the best drivetrains and brakes, but of course it doesn't stop there. Shimano quality parts can be found in its Pro line. That's where I go every time I need a new saddle. There is only one saddle for me, and that is the Pro Griffin saddle. I do the road variation and the mountain bike variation. Love it on both. Now, saddles are, of course, a personal choice. Shimano knows that, too, which is why you will find 5 models in the Pro Bike Gear road section and various widths within each of those saddles. The models come in these great widths, and they work for women, too. Honestly, a saddle is more than a marginal gain. It can mean everything, especially when you set out for 200 miles in Kansas. So if you are needing a new one and you want to go with a name you can trust, check out Shimano's Pro Bike Gear line of saddles. You can find them at pro-bikegear.com.
And I'm Michael Houghton, Heidi to Most. This is a follow-up episode to episode 94 of Marginal Gains, where we spoke with Silca's e-commerce manager, Travis Verhoff, about his plans to take on the Unbound 200. You know that race, right? Terrible thing in the Flint Hills of Kansas. Travis is now back from Kansas. He has rinsed off the mud and is back at Silca headquarters, which is kind of tough, Travis. I mean, it's hard enough going to Emporia and slogging through the mud. Now you're already back at work. I mean, just a couple days ago, you were hammering it out there through mud sections. So I guess welcome back to work, Travis.
Yeah, back at work and ready to go 8 a.m. on Monday morning.
Yeah, when we talked last, we were about a month out from Unbound. So take us through the days leading up, the final week or so of prep. And then, how did everything go? Were there any adjustments between when we last talked and your final setup?
Yeah, I think equipment-wise, I made my final switch about 8 p.m. on Friday night. So definitely some last minute scrambling there on the equipment setup. From a month out, I when I talked to you guys last, I had been feeling great, riding really well, and actually had a chat with Dylan of like I think I'm feeling too good this far out, and if you looked up the result, did not feel as good on race day. So, I went to, where did I go? Scottsdale with my wife. Used that as a little bit of a training trip. Did a hike at the Grand Canyon. We called that heat acclimation, and did quite a bit of riding there. Week of was pretty. I was kind of in a little bit of a hole from that trip. So for about a week and a half out, I was really just trying to shed fatigue and be a little bit more fresh on race day. And got to Emporia on Wednesday. Went out to, actually, I didn't really realize where I was going. I was just trying to go do the Texaco Hill section. I wanted to check that out. So I parked right where the 41, I think it was mile 41 water station was, and did a little loop out there. And Thursday, we started at 8 a.m. to set up the booth at the expo. Did a ride out to go see the infamous mud section, which was hard-packed dirt at the time, and I was a little confused why everybody was freaking out about the mud section that I just rode through at 20 miles an hour. And then I actually got a call from our marketing manager, Michelle, that there was a river running through the booth as I was on my way back from the mud section. Because apparently the rain had started in Emporia a little bit earlier than it did about 10 miles south. So, yeah.
So did you bring hip waders for this trip?
I should have. I think my my aero sock got covered like up to the top of the tall aero sock, trying to trudge through the mud. So, yeah. We set up. I think the expo was 2 to 7 on Thursday. So we were there all day. I got to say, it was incredible to see everybody out there. So many comments, and I really appreciate it about the different videos that we've done, the interview that we did with you guys. It was really nice to hear that helped. I had a few different people tell me that they changed their setup based on, what we were doing, and that's pretty awesome. So, I even got a comment afterwards of helping somebody finish their first 100-miler, and like that really was special to me. So
yeah,
nice to be able to help out, even if it didn't work out as well for me.
Mm-hmm. So when you left us, I'm going to kind of review your equipment choices going into the 200. You were on a Factor Austro Gravel with GRX DI2, 2x setup, 4831 front, 1140 cassette in the rear. Well, by the way, we did see a lot of crazy drivetrain setups there in Emporia, including a little sneak peek at something new from Shimano coming in the GRX line. So pretty cool there. But Travis on the tried and true GRX, tried and true. It's not that old yet, but 11 speed, 4831, 1140. GRX wheels, Pinarello Cinturado H's, 45 millimeter in width. A little tight in that rear triangle. I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. Yep. Vittoria inserts and tire pressure, which we're going to talk about in a second as well, because I know you were planning on doing a follow-up Chung method there in town. I want to see if you got to do that at all. Chain was Hot Wax X. Again, something we're going to follow up with, considering the conditions. And Synergetic at the stops, possibly in your bag, depending on conditions. Aero bars, of course. Osprey Talon 2.5-liter hydration pack that you put through the wind tunnel. We learned that wasn't the fastest pack in the tunnel, but it was the one you had. We're going to, I guess, hear if you decide to change it out in favor of Marginal Gains. Silca Aero socks, the tall ones. Helmet, Giro Aero Road. I think that covers it. That was my list, at least. 4,000 starters. Lifetime said there were 75% finish rate. I actually counted more, something like 63%, at least in the 200, but anyhow.
Yeah.
Kind of splitting hairs there, right? So, tell me, first of all, is that equipment list what you went with on race day? Any changes to that?
A few changes. So, the pack was a Qatari 7. I'm not sure how I got the wrong wrong one in there. I hemmed and hawed pretty hard over going to an Usui pack. I spent probably more time than I should have in the Usui booth, debating buying a new one before the race. But I had 3 bladders set up and ready to go, and I thought, no, I'm not messing with changing it. But I have another race in a month, so I might do that for that one. Because I found a Usui one that had a 2-liter bladder, and that was my big holdup, is that my bladder was 2.5 liters, and the one from the Outlander Pro is 1.5 liters. So, the other big one was tire choice. So with the mud section, I started getting photos from friends and other people I knew in the area that were riding it, and then heard it rain. It was going to rain overnight. And I, having seen the section that day, I thought, it can't get that bad. I'm going to swap to a 40 in the rear. And I ended up rationalizing it to myself that if my wheel locked up and it was a 45, I'd be really mad at myself for not switching. And at least if I switched, I did something to try to prevent it. So, my wheel locked up the second I tried to ride anything. I spent a couple different, when I saw it and got the first photos of the mud section, it was the worst one I saw on Friday was a 4-foot long puddle. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it'll get a little bit worse, but no big deal. So I swapped to that 40, and then we had a 3 and change mile hike-a-bike,
Right.
where I was carrying it most of the time or pushing it in the grass when I could. But yeah, so that 40, I don't know. It was definitely the right call over the 45, but it locked up as soon as I tried to ride when it got a little bit better. And I think, part of me says, well, maybe I should have just gone to the 35, but I think that would have just delayed the inevitable that it was going to lock up anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think the result, I think based on what I saw in the video, the result's the same. I mean,
Yeah.
I heard Ben Delaney, him and Hahn about the same thing. He did the 100. Like, he was like, he rode the same bike you did, which has low clearances on it, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, even though this bike probably has no business in a mud fest, no bike is going to survive that thing, the amount of mud you guys ran into. You said before going out that you might try some Chung method there in Emporia to finalize your pressure. Did you get a chance to do that?
I did not. I did not get to go do a full, Chung method test. I think I was a little over ambitious on the timelines. So that first ride I got done, needed to get back and get some dinner. It took me an hour to get there. I thought it was going to be like a 20-minute drive. But I did test out a new pressure. Certainly wasn't the scientific approach, but the 45, and I have not really put much thought or effort into why this is, but the 45 Pirellis, I actually had 2 sets of them. I had one that was a tan wall and one that was a black wall. And I had filmed a puncture test video where I ran over some nails and probably had 25 punctures in the black wall tires, but I had been riding them for, I don't know, whenever I shot that video a month or 2 ago. I'd been riding them ever since and hadn't had a problem, but in the back of my mind, I was like, if I get a flat that day and I have 20 punctures already in there, I'm going to be pretty upset with myself that I didn't swap the tires out. So, but those tires blew out. They were 45 Pirelli Cinturato M's, or H's, and they blew out to 48. So I punched that into the tire pressure calculator, and it gave me like 24 and 25 PSI. So I went out and rode that the first day, and it felt great. Like it soaked up a lot of the chunkiness. Still felt like it rolled really well on the road. And like we've said time and time again, I'd rather go a couple PSI low than high. But then when I swapped Thursday night, I swapped to the tan wall tires that were 45s, and they blew out to 46. So same tire, tan wall versus black wall, they were 2 mil different. I don't know if that's just manufacturing tolerances or if it's a difference in the construction or whatever it was, but I thought it was kind of interesting, something to make note of. But yeah, I did not get to do a Chung method test. I went with the Category 3 gravel on our tire pressure calculator, and I think that because I was running mismatched tires, run it for the front, run it for the rear, and I ran 26 in the front, which I think is what I talked about doing, and 33 in the rear.
I think what you were saying about being overly ambitious with time is a very common racer post-mortem learning anyway. I don't know if I have ever been to an event where I have put together a pretty aggressive set of things that I'm going to do and then had time to do all of them. Somehow, obviously you're talking to people, right? Folks are interested in getting together with you and noodling over their challenges or things they're thinking about. You've got stuff to do. You generally have about half as much time to get the things done as you expect. So, I mean, that is just a fact of racing. You kind of have to really overestimate the amount of time you're going to need to get everything in order.
Mm-hmm. So you threw that 40 on Friday night? Is that when that one, the 40 in the back went on? Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else about the setup as we last left you that was changed?
No, I think the other setup, the only other setup thing I can think of is I did not talk about running a GoPro, which I did. Trying to get a little bit of video out there to publish later.
Sure.
And the number plate. I think I had planned on.
Yeah.
I had planned on taping it on the side like I did at Big Sugar or at where was I, Mid-South, and like we tested in the wind tunnel, and they were fairly adamant that was not okay.
Right.
So I did not do that to not cause a problem. But what I did do, because the aero bars on that bike have multiple holes in them, I ran the twist tie through the aero bars and then the bottom of it up against the stem, so it was fairly flat. So it was still flat on the front of the bike like they asked, just didn't really look like the picture.
Yeah, I saw a lot of pros who couldn't run aero bars this year, angling their number plate as best they could. So putting the top edge of the number plate under the bars and then angling the bottom edge towards the head tube to try to keep it from facing absolutely flat and forward facing, right? Just creating some type of angle, some way, so it doesn't put all that frontal area out there. Because those number plates you can do all you want, right? As far as aerodynamics, they're like a killer. Like
it's a sail. Yeah. It's
goodness gracious.
A shoot.
So, okay, cool. So you did get to fuss with the number plate a little bit and hopefully keep Lifetime happy in the process. What we didn't ask you going into Unbound is your shoes and cleat choice. Were you road or mountain? Where were you on that?
Mountain. So I actually had a fairly in-depth conversation with Adam Roberge on, I don't know, Thursday or Friday about shoe choice and pedal choice, because he was kind of going back and forth. I said, well, for me, the chances of me having to get off the bike and walk or run at some point are pretty high. So I never mess with road pedals on a gravel race, because chances of getting off in the dirt or some river crossing or something are fairly high. But for him, he's probably going to ride through a lot more stuff than I am. But I think he ended up going mountain pedals because it looked like it was going to be pretty nasty the next day.
Yeah, if somebody could guarantee you a dry day at Unbound, you'd do road every time. I mean, if somebody said it's going to be dry, you don't worry about it. You're going to put road pedals and cleats on and bury it, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem is Kansas and rain and
that's definitely an alternate universe course that you're talking about there.
I did happen to catch so the woman who won was from Germany, and her partner, friend, whatever, she had somebody with her too in the men's race, and at the last second he went from road pedals and cleats to mountain, but he had not been on his mountain pedals and cleats since early spring or late winter. And so he got 3/4 of the way through the race, and his calves just locked up on him. Like, he was just so not used to being in them, he couldn't move anymore and had to DNF the race. So
it's I don't know if you've ever done that. I have made that switch before, and just if you don't adjust your saddle height when you make that switch, you are setting yourself up for a world of hurt, because I mean, there just is a difference in reach there. Your cadence changes, I won't say drastically, but over 70 miles significantly, absolutely significantly.
Okay, so mountain cleats and or shoes, I should say, and pedals. Good call, obviously, there, considering what we got.
I will say I had XTR pedals on, and even clogged those up. I couldn't clip in for 2 miles or something after the mud section. So,
wow.
Yeah, you can grind against those real hard, and eventually it seems like you can push anything through them. But there will be a time when you are just, you're pedaling on a mud platform, and that's just the way it is for a while.
No, that's true. So then it rains Friday night into Saturday morning. The XLers are out there slogging it. I think some of the reports were coming back from them, or people were hearing from the people out on the 350 miler that things were getting pretty rough. They had an attrition rate out there too. I'm sure. I know even a couple high-level pros, at least one that I know of, pulled out of that 350 miler out of complete frustration. He'd walked for 2 or 3 hours and said, "That's it. That's all I can handle." And then, of course, the majority of you get up Saturday morning and trudge off into the sunrise. The pros went off first. They had the first dibs at the mud section, men and women, and then along came the larger group, which is the Citizen Racer. So it rained Friday night, Saturday morning. What are your thoughts then? Obviously, you hear the pounding rain. Any thoughts there, Travis? Does it change your thinking, mental aspect?
No, I went in blissfully ignorant. So, like I said, the Friday, I rode that section on Friday. I rode the whole thing. Or at least I rode part of it and could see the whole thing. And so in my mind, we had a little bit of mud to deal with. And then when we got there, I was actually my friend that came in and rode with me, Paul. He had a pretty good day and ended up towing me around for about half the race. But I had set a fairly strict normalized power ceiling. Like, I was not going to go over 180 watts in the first 2 hours was my goal. And I remember coming in at a D Road Hill or something there's this little hill at mile 10, and we were in a group of, 30 coming into that, and I looked down and I was at like 190 something, 193 maybe. And I kind of yelled up to him like, "Hey, we need to chill after this mud section, because I'm going a little harder than I need to, but I don't want to give up this position going into a mud section," because I thought we had a few hundred meters and I just wanted to get through it before the 1,000 people that were behind me. And then we got there and there is no riding. There is no riding this. Even if I wanted to try, there were too many people walking. You couldn't.
Give me the whole picture, because I have not seen the videos or I haven't seen the experience you lived, and the videos apparently Hottie has been watching. So, I mean, how many and how bad was this, and how long?
One quick thing, Travis, where did you corral at the start line? How far back were you?
I rolled up in, I think we'd kind of decided that 13 hours was probably going to be best case scenario on the course. So that's what we tried to get close to that.
Is that like midfield on the start line, or were you on the start line?
Yeah, probably a little in front of halfway. So probably the beginning of the second third, I think would probably be fair. I was almost intentional. I did not want to be near the front, because it'll trigger that rabbit reaction or dog chasing a rabbit reaction in my head, where I just start jumping from group to group, and I already did that a couple times. So
Okay. So you ride 11
yeah,
miles, and suddenly here's this strip of mud
Yeah.
in front of you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What is that?
I think we were averaging like 21 going into the mud section. I mean, so we were cooking. It was we came over to the right side, tried to ride a little bit of the grass. There were two, depending on where you're at in the mud section, there were grass sections on either side that you could ride. But like I said, there were too many people in front of us that there was no riding by the time we got there. I think the pros were able to ride some of that. But it was at points, like I said earlier, I was crossing the road because the grass on the one side ran out, and I was going to the other side to get into the less mud. And I think my foot sank all the way to the top of the aero sock. So there was no chance of riding that. There was a few guys on mountain bikes that I saw trying to ride it. A few on gravel bikes that it sounded like their bike was about to break in half. So I don't think it lasted very long. All the stories I'd heard that anybody that did try to ride it
So very
way more time on the
soft
side of
mud
the road.
up to your shins, all the way across.
Yeah, and sometimes
Wow.
it wasn't that bad, but it was my first experience with the peanut butter mud, and peanut butter is a generous term for that. It was more like
Yeah, give us a
concrete
full
mud.
description of the stuff. Yeah, give us a description of the stuff, because people have been
Yeah,
just
so
putting
because
it in
I didn't
these...
know it. Yeah, because I didn't know it was as bad as it was, I made no effort to bring a paint stick. Like I said, blissfully ignorant. So I ended up, every time you would kind of go over a little hill, you'd be like, all right, it's got to be better on the other side of this hill. We're going to be able to ride after that. And then you get to the top of the hill and you could see the road turn, and just for a mile you'd see people walking with their bikes. Like, oh man, this isn't ending anytime soon. So by the time we did finally get somewhere to kind of try to ride again, I rode down this little hill, and then the wheel locked up. There was no spinning it. I had to basically put all of my weight while I was trying to walk the bike in the grass to even get the wheel to move. So I pulled over, found a little stick, and was trying to get it out of there, but there is not much clearance on that frame in the back.
Yeah.
That bike is made to go fast, not to shed mud. So I ended up trying to push it out with my fingers, but it was not coming out. So I ended up getting it, like, kind of bashing the bike on the ground, the tire, trying to get it to shake free. That wasn't happening. I ended up getting a stick and getting it enough that it sort of freed the wheel. And I think we got clear of the mud about 14 and a half miles in, and the top of, Teeter Hill, at mile 30-ish, I kind of was like, man, this is hard. My power numbers are not saying that, like, I'm doing anything crazy. Like, I should be totally fine right now, and I am struggling. I'm crawling along. Like, I'm not going nearly as fast as I feel like I should be for this. And so I looked back and, like, oh, the mud is rubbing on the rim, all the way wrapped all the way around the tire onto the rim that it was rubbing. So I got off the bike again. I couldn't clear it with my hands. I couldn't find a stick. So I ended up taking the whole rear wheel off and scraping the whole seat tube and getting it clear. And all of a sudden, I was going a lot faster after that. It's crazy how that works.
So your bike probably, when it was dry and ready to race, weighed, I don't know if you weighed it, I'm guessing that looked like a 21-pound bike maybe?
Yeah, I think it was like 23 with
23?
With 45s and inserts and a bunch of sealant and bottles and cages and aero bars. And,
Nice.
Fully
That's a
loaded.
great,
Yeah.
That's fully loaded. Now, how about when caked in mud at its worst? How much did that bike weigh?
120.
Yeah, it sure felt like a lot. I don't know. I didn't end up putting it on the scale. But yeah, I mean, it was honestly, it didn't carry a whole lot of mud for very long because I couldn't move it if it did. So,
Oh, okay.
if there was there was a light smattering on the frame, but if it was in the wheel well, it just locked up the wheel, so I had to stop and get it off of there.
Okay.
Yeah, plus you do reach a point of where as much is falling off as is collecting, right? So you do plateau on the amount of mud that you are carrying. But I mean, it's not just in the kind of mess that you're in. It's not just on your bike. It's also on you, right? I mean, if you've been into mud up to your shins, then you are carrying a significant amount of mud all over you. And honestly, I mean, how it feels.
Real heavy.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably felt like you were wearing ski boots practically.
Yeah.
Oh man.
The other thing I saw was some people were getting mud collecting on their drivetrain, so much so that the chain wouldn't even stay in their narrow, wide chain rings. It would just hop right out. Were you having any drivetrain difficulties, Travis, with this mud?
Right after the mud section, I had one gear I was apparently not allowed to go in.
Okay.
But it would just, if I would shift into, I don't even know what tooth cog it was, but it would shift up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. But as long as I stayed out of that gear, it was fine. And after a mile or two, it calmed down, went right back there, cleared enough mud out. I think that's a good shout out to the wax of shedding enough mud to be able to do that. But I will say the GRX components worked really well. I think the only issue I had there, I was running stuff that I wasn't supposed to be, and if I got into that, the way the synchro shift works, if you're in the 48 tooth and you keep shifting up the cassette, once you get to, I don't even know if it's a 34 or 36 tooth cog that's the second to last before the 40, if you try to shift up into the 40, it will shift down in the front chainring.
Yep.
And I think I locked up the derailleur a couple times because I don't think the front derailleur could shift fast enough because it was clogged with mud.
Okay.
So it was basically trying to ride in the 48-40, and it did not want to do that.
Doesn't want to do that, no. Yeah, because you're a bit out of spec with that cassette, obviously. Shimano would tell you that you're out of spec.
Oh, yeah.
It can do it. It can do a 40, that Di2 can, GRX, but it's not designed to do that still. If you do the synchro shift right, in dry conditions, it's going to keep you out of that combo, that 48-40 combo, and you should be fine. But the mud's the mud, right? I mean, it's going to do things that you don't. Do you think there's anything you could have done equipment-wise to mitigate this mess? Anything come to mind right now? You go, besides the mud stick, I mean, you should have had a mud stick. We should have told you to have a mud stick. Anything
Massive
else?
clearance.
Oh, I knew
might
that
have
one.
helped. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you could have done equipment-wise that might have helped at all?
Rode a mountain bike.
Yeah.
I had another buddy, Justin, that was there that was debating on bringing his Super Caliber. It's that really low travel rear suspension mountain bike from Trek.
Yep.
He was really kicking himself afterwards because that would have been a great bike he did the 100, would have been a great bike to go through that mud section on. But no, I mean, I think the equipment setup was dialed. I didn't really have any qualms there. I don't think, like I said, would a 35 have been a little bit better? Yeah, probably, but it really would have just delayed the inevitable. I have massive clearance on the fork and the front wheel locked up too. So,
Wow.
I mean, it's a podcast, so not good to use your hands, but giant softball size mud clumps in the front wheel. And I did not expect that. It was sticky and hard and full of rocks and structure, so it was not coming out easily.
Yeah, when you're riding there, you're essentially using the time-tested technique of making adobe bricks, right? There is grass, there is mud, there is rocks and gravel. If you go ahead and shape that, you can make something that'll last a lifetime. It is certainly going to collect into an extraordinary size, and it is going to jam any moving object. It will collect on and stop it. It's just amazing.
It caught a motorbike. I don't know if you guys have seen that picture
going
around.
I fully believe it, though.
There was a dirt bike, not like a motocross bike. I don't know what you call those, but an off-road motorcycle, with I don't know how wide those tires are, 6 inches or something, and it was stuck up to the axles in mud, and we saw the driver there trying to kick mud off of his boots and just kind of chuckled like, yeah, that bike's not getting out of here anytime soon.
The only time I got caught up in a situation like this in a race was Rock Cobbler. I can't remember. Rock Cobbler's in Bakersfield. We got rain the night before. And it's actually similar to Unbound in that a lot of rolling hills, exposed, right? Cattle grazing, that type of environment as well. And we got caught up in the mud. Oh, there's also orchards out there. And we got caught up in the mud like that. And I'll never forget trying to just being brought to a halt. You're riding and then you just stop. And you bring your bike home eventually and you wash it off. And then that final kick in the head is you look down and the paint has just been scoured off your stays and your fork. So how's the factor? Did it get scraped up pretty good?
Yeah, I think the frame is I don't know what the phrase would be, but the shining light of a rough day. So I was riding along like, oh man, I'm probably gonna need a new frame. Like this thing's just gonna be trashed, and like I was worried that there was just gonna be a hole worn in it because I knew there was a bunch of rocks just grinding. I have a couple scratches on the inside of the drive side crank arm. And that's it.
And that's it?
So,
that's amazing.
I think I put 4 different coatings of like our graphene wax all over the frame. I basically stripped the frame down before we left and coated it in graphene. As I saw more and more rain in the forecast, my assumption going to Kansas was that 50% chance of rain in Kansas meant we were going to get pop-up thunderstorms, and it would probably make it muddy and gross, but not like last year, and turns out it was worse. So I prepped by doing a graphene wax coat all over the rear triangle, all over the down tube, on the inside of the fork. Basically anything that I could get wax onto, I was trying to do that, and really just to try to get the mud to shed off, and it was just way too much.
Yeah. I mean, so it probably did a great job just based on how you are able. I mean, the fact that the frame isn't totaled means that you were successful. It's just that, I mean, there was nothing in the world that was going to prevent at least superficial damage. Yeah. So I am still trying to picture, how long was this mud section, and was it necessary? Because my read on it is this didn't necessarily have to happen. Is there percolating resentment for this giant mud section? Did it have to be part of the race?
And let me add to that question too, Travis. Why just that area? Why did the water collect there, if you can imagine why?
Yeah. I have a little bit of mixed feelings on, not too many. They're pretty one-sided. So why was how long was it? It was a little over 3 miles. I've heard as long as 5, and I didn't realize after talking to Robert to do the Chung method testing, I put a speed sensor on my rear wheel, and I couldn't figure out why the distance and time metrics were different on my buddy's computer and mine, because I have it set to auto pause when I'm stopped. And I thought, well, I'm moving. Why would it stop?
You were dragging a fixed wheel.
Yeah, no, well, I had it on my shoulder.
Oh, right.
So it didn't even occur to me until like after the event, like, oh, that's why. So I had just over 3 miles, so somewhere probably 3 to 4. Yeah. And it took, like I said, we did the first 10 miles in 28 minutes, or I don't know, whatever it was. And then it was like an hour and 20, hour and 30 to get through the mud section. So we were debating, does the time cutoff at the aid station, is that at the water station too? Because I don't know if we'll make it there in a 10-mile-an-hour average. So it was super long. Why is it that bad? So it's a B road. It's totally unmaintained. They don't do anything to it. There's no gravel. It's just dirt. And it's kind of in a little bit of a lowland area that comes right after that D road hill or whatever it is. So I think all the water just kind of collects there. It's off to I think the west of the interstate. So I think all that water, there's just nowhere else for the water to go.
Okay.
And since there's no gravel to provide a surface to be on, it just turns into a big mud pit.
All right.
So definitely not ideal for riding bikes. Did it need to be there? I would say no. I would say it shouldn't have been there. In the rider meeting the day before, I didn't go, I was at the expo, but from the recording, my understanding is that Ben said the race director, if it was too bad, they would reroute it to the course that they had last year, which was basically just a little bypass of that section on gravel roads. My friend Justin that I mentioned earlier, wanting to ride the mountain bike, he pulled out after the mud section and rode the other part of the course. He was like, it was great. So for me, I didn't sign up for a Tough Mudder. I didn't sign up for a running race or a duathlon. I would have preferred to ride my bike given the option. Now, that sounds like an excuse why I DNF'd. That had almost nothing to do with it. But I have seen some posts going around that kind of made me think about that a little bit more of, welcome to gravel, this is our sport. You encounter adversity, you overcome it, and you figure out how to finish, which I can totally respect that some people enjoy doing that. I think 200 miles and 10,000 feet of climbing is enough to overcome and and figure out how to finish. I don't think we need to, I think Nicholas Roach, one of the pros, I forget now, the name's escaping me, but said he had walked 8 miles. That, to me, is not a bike race. But that's Unbound, and that's what they chose to do. So, if you're riding in it, trying to finish it, your job is to figure out how to finish. So, it pretty quickly, walking through there, like, okay, so the 12.5-hour goal that I had, gone. After walking for about 10 minutes, my buddy and I kept joking, like, all right, 13's gone. Walk a little bit more, like, I think 14's gone. So, yeah, I mean, there was a route around it. The mud section at 170, my understanding is that there's not really a good route around it, and it's only a mile, and not as bad. So I think, in my head, if I was making the decision, I would have routed around it, because that seemed like an awful lot to go through in the first 15 miles.
Well, that mud section at 170, that mud section at 170 this year was rideable. I mean, everyone rode through it this year, so the rain didn't attack it like it got last year. And it's a tough call for race organizers. I've seen Michael Marks down at BWR get rain overnight and reroute his course. He just decided that people on skinny tire road bikes shouldn't be riding through certain sections, and he's done it. But it's not easy, right? I mean, you got your permits, you've told people where your race is going to go, you've told local officials, here's the route. I don't know how much law enforcement they had out there. Spirit of gravel, I guess, is mud. I don't know. It's hard, really, really hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to sort of understand the zeitgeist of the whole sport, right? I always think back to, was it 2015, Yuri Hauswald's win? He didn't win because he was the guy with the highest FTP and the biggest lungs. He won because he was the best at getting dirty and basically being intense a little bit longer than anyone else could be. And it's an iconic, heroic moment. But I also listen to what you're doing, and I'm going like, well, I'm never going to go race Unbound because I don't like doing that. I mean, I love hearing the stories, but I wouldn't want to put myself through one of them. So, I mean, I guess you get to decide whether, is this your thing? And, it is some people's thing. And maybe you keep saying we're going to have the same course no matter what. And it becomes a race for the kinds of people who like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to reserve a little bit of judgment, understanding my perspective of coming from a closed course roadie background, and that's, the type of racing I typically watch and have participated in and enjoy and understand more, and but at the same time, I hope we can keep more people coming, because the rest of the day I had a terrible day, and the rest of the day was super fun. So, I think there's room for a little bit of both, and maybe a little give and take on both sides.
Sure.
So
take us through the rest. I mean, we've covered 14 miles here, 15 miles. How'd the rest go?
Yeah. I told my buddy Paul that was with me, like, I knew quitting would come into my mind at some point today. I didn't think it'd be in the first 15 miles.
Yeah.
But I mean, after that, I think I counted afterwards how many steps I had at the expo and time on my feet, and Friday I brought a chair and sat down a little bit. That usually helps quite a bit if you can take a break every once in a while. And I think I underestimated how much that was going to play a factor. I think, right, that's the only thing I can come up with, because at mile 30 I was, man, I'm starting to hurt, and that's not good. I have 175 miles to go. I shouldn't be hurting yet. So we rode through those sections. I will say the aero bars were kind of a lifesaver. Jumping from, if there's a couple groups that were riding in a way that I did not want to participate. A lot of starting and stopping and slamming on the brakes and skidding tires, and so I could kind of get in the aero bars and put in a little dig and get away from them. That was really nice. Or even just, there's a group right up there. Really would be nice to sit on a draft right now. They can get in the aero bars and kind of close that down. And I think the biggest piece for me was hand position. So that much bumpy terrain and just jarring. It was super nice to have another spot to put your hands. So that was really big. And then there were some pretty long headwind sections, so it definitely made up. I will say the cattle pen section, they posted a lot of pictures of this fresh kind of gnarly gravel that was going to be so difficult, and that didn't seem to be the case at all. It was pretty tame, considering what it looked like it was going to be. And that, if for anybody that hasn't been out to the Flint Hills, it's beautiful in a nothingness kind of way. Lots of ridges that you can see for miles of these, rolling green pastures, and the kind of winding dirt roads that, if you're in Indiana like I am, the gravel roads here, at least up near Indianapolis, they are 10 miles long and straight as an arrow, and you go 5 miles this way and turn left, and then you go 5 miles that way. There was a lot of winding around and going up the little ridge and coming down, and so it made for a really interesting day, right? I think if you did that on those long straight roads, it would be pretty boring.
Yep.
So we got to the mile 41, which was the water stop. I didn't fill up anything. I had plenty of water, so I wasn't part of the taking up all the water. I know they're getting a lot of flack for that. The water station ended up running out of water for the 100 milers. Yeah. And my buddy got some water. We kind of took off and went down. That section coming down Texaco Hill on the way out was really chunky. I rode it Wednesday when I got there. But luckily, I think enough cars had driven it and people had ridden that section that it kind of created a groove. So while it was pretty bad, it wasn't nearly as bad as it was a couple days before. And then really we just rode into the aid station. I can't thank my wife enough for coming out, and nice to have a familiar face. I was hurting pretty bad by the time I got there, and was
that mile 105? That aid station?
was-
or I think
No, so it was 79, 78, something like that.
78.7. Okay, that one. Okay.
Yeah, at the Eureka High School. We actually got a little bit of pavement. So I've never been so happy to be in Eureka, I don't think. A little pavement.
A friendly
break.
face and a little bit of pavement. It can boost morale in a huge way.
Yeah, but by that time in the day, it had gotten really hot. The Garmin always reads kind of higher temperature, especially on road, because it is bouncing off the pavement. And I think I saw it on Is King's Instagram too, but we had the same temperature reading as 106 on the Garmin. So it went from mud to like, are we going to get heat stroke out here? And I kind of sat down for a little bit, got some nutrition, ate my oatmeal cream pie, and I kind of gathered myself, put some sunscreen on, was like, all right, we'll do this. We'll figure it out to the next one. And I felt a lot better till about mile 90, which only about 10 miles. It bought me a feeling okay. And I think that was the point where it started to get to, man, if I'm only able to make it 10 miles at a time before I start to feel like garbage again, another 100 and change miles is going to be a really long day. So we ended up, as the storm rolled in, there was a guy that had water on the side of the road, and apparently I heard a lot of talk of him at the finish. I stopped because I was out of regular water and I wanted more, and poured some in. He said, man, something really bad is coming. Do you guys want to get in our barn for shelter? And I'm like, I'm fine riding through the rain. But just the way he said it in my head was like, this guy knows something we don't know. I don't know what is coming in that storm, but like, I want to finish this thing, but I don't want to die doing it. So we went and got in there. We had no service, so we couldn't call, we couldn't check the radar, whatever. So we waited for, 5 or 10 minutes, and rained really hard. Oh, I don't think this is nearly as bad as it is. And we had like 12 miles to go to the 124 water stop or whatever it was. And so kind of limped my way to that water stop and ended up calling for a ride. So it was probably could have made it 5 miles further, but I was certainly not going to make it another 80. So called for a ride. Wife came and picked me up, and then we went to, Madison was the second town. I think that was the town for the second aid station. So we went there and zagged for the couple other people that were kind of with us. Got some Casey's pizza and a couple beers and felt a lot better. So
I forget, Travis, do they have time cutoffs there at Unbound?
Yeah, so it's a 10 mile an hour average at every one. There's the race promoter for Dust Bowl, which is a race here in Indianapolis, or 20 minutes west of Indy. He was there, and I've ridden with him and raced against him on road races and stuff. And when I was doing that, I was always a lot faster at the end of a crit, but anything that was long, he was going to destroy me in. And he came into the water stop after me, and he looked pretty wrecked. And that was kind of I had already called for a ride. I'm like, all right, I think this is a good decision. And then I think I saw his finish time was like almost 18 hours. Yeah. And it was like 1750 something. Yeah. So I'm pretty convinced that if I had been able to limp to the line, like I probably wasn't coming in before 1 a.m. and really had no interest in doing that. So
no, it's a long time to be out there. Okay, so you made it to mile 124. You were not you didn't miss the time cut, but I think on a personal level, you missed the cut. You thought, well, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
This thing is getting kind of out of control and a bit ridiculous. You know me, I'm going to ask about drivetrain. How was your drivetrain doing at this point? I mean, late in the day. What was you were on the
pretty good,
new
really.
Hot Wax X. Yeah, really?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, it was.
That's a testament
my bottom bracket,
right there.
My bottom bracket was kind of destroyed. that's just a giant pet peeve of mine, was creaking. It was making a bunch of noise and whatever, the chain was making a little bit at that point, but yeah, actually kind of remarkably well riding. Like, I don't understand how this is working, but just going to keep rolling with it.
The chain and the lubricant itself, it had more mileage left in it. Like, could you have kept going on that original Hot Wax X?
No, so I topped up with Synergetic at the aid station. That definitely helped get some of the nastiness out of there. Or I picked up more because it was dry at that point. But I mean, I could have ridden more, but I definitely benefited from getting some more lubricant on there. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't, compared to what else I heard out there. There was some real nasty stuff going on, and that wasn't going on mine at all.
Okay, all right. Yeah, because I think you're one of the first to put Hot Wax X in an extreme condition like that, right, in the field. I know Adam Kieran down at Zero Friction Cycling has been putting that new Silca wax through the paces down there, and he has some early results on it, but we haven't seen anything, at least heard anything from the field yet, where it's been put up against something like that. So,
and yeah, I'm going to be the opposite of Hottie. Oh, go ahead.
Good. Oh, go ahead, Vetty.
No, go back to your answer on this. Mine's completely on a different topic.
I would say, had I known how muddy it was going to be, I probably would have switched back to Secret Chain Blend. That performs better in the wet than Hot Wax X will. Those early tests that have come out, it's in the dry. Hot Wax X has beat anything that's ever been tested by a decent margin. I think until it hit the wet, it was at a 0% wear. So 3,000 K is quite a bit to not have any recordable wear. But once it hits the water, it's not as good as Secret Chain Blend, which I think has done better than just about anything else in the wet. So probably would have done that. Maybe had a few other tricks up my sleeve of some stuff we've tested, but that'll probably come out at a later date. But yeah, overall, the Hot Wax X did really well. I think Secret Chain Blend would have done even better. But again, that wasn't my problem on the day.
So how's your head? It's after I DNF in a race, I start what-ifing myself to death. Whether it was down to me or down to conditions or down to injury, doesn't matter. I'm always, I'm always saying if onlys, right? I'm curious how you're feeling.
Yeah, I think obviously is not how I wanted to do this. I told my wife I felt bad for her and my son. I've spent a lot more time away from them, riding, doing all that kind of stuff that, well, if I was just going to DNF, maybe I could have gone to the playground with my kid more. But I don't think... I'm in a pretty good headspace, I guess I should say. I think...
Good.
I don't know what I could have done differently with training, given the limitations that I knew I had. I wasn't going to stop being a dad and wasn't going to stop being a husband and wasn't going to, not show up to work. So,
right.
And then some of those days you're just carrying a little too much stress and can't make the ride happen that day or, whatever it is. So I don't know that, I think the plan worked really well as far as training. I probably peaked a little early, but I think sometimes that just kind of happens when your body adjusts and adapts to things. The only thing I think I really would have, I wouldn't have changed really anything with equipment. The only thing I think I probably would have changed when I inevitably do this again is I thought I was going to be able to stand in the booth for 2 days and do my normal expo. We did a bike wash for all of our pro athletes after Thursday, so I think I went from basically 8 a.m. to about 10:30 p.m. on Thursday. I would not do that again. that was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. And I probably would have made putting my feet up a little bit higher priority. Yeah. But other than that, I didn't ride myself to a place where I was curled up in the fetal position on the side of the road with no service. There was just, I didn't cramp. There was just nothing in the legs. You know, I was digging to get 130, 140 watts out of my legs. And I knew if I was already at that point, it wasn't going to get any better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do you remember Jeremiah Bishop, who we've had on this show as well as on our Leadville show? He is famous for spending, full work days in the booth prior to doing a big race. And, it's always been just a little bit crazy making, but he thrives on it, right? He's the kind of person who he loves people and so forth, but there is a real physical cost, to being on your feet. There's a reason that, anytime you see in any pro tour racer not on a bike, it is on their back, feet elevated, right? You are definitely, you are taking money out of the bank when you're doing your job, right? It just is the way it is. And, it's a cost that you just bake in. It's, of course it's part of your job, and the whole thing is part of what you do. So, it's acceptable cost.
Well, and Jeremiah won.
I will say part
Go ahead.
Part of that, part of, I think, why I'm in a better headspace than I might otherwise be is I talked to so many people at the expo. After the race, I went back to the finish line and, talked to a bunch of people there, and I got so much positive feedback and that they enjoyed watching the journey, and people were super nice and, pretty understanding that, hey, this was hard. A DNF isn't the end of the world. If it was easy, it wouldn't be a story worth telling. So, somebody came over and brought me a beer. That was appreciated. And, just said like, this was fun to watch and be able to see kind of the technical side of things and choices and, all that kind of stuff. So, being able to, I think the biggest comment was somebody telling me that they finished their first 100 miles and attributed that to me, which I think maybe
gotta love that.
But it meant a lot to be able to try to help somebody else ride bikes, because that's really what, if you love cycling and you love the sport, you want everybody else to be involved and help it grow, and if I did that for a couple people, that's awesome. And honestly, kind of an unintended consequence. I thought it would be kind of interesting for our customers and our listeners and stuff. But to get anybody new into the sport or grow their participation in the sport, that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to do it again?
Yeah.
He said,
I remember. Yeah, you said when I inevitably do it again. It sounds like that conversation has already gone on.
Yeah. There's no way I'm going to let that be the last time I do Unbound. I don't know if I'll do it next year. We'll see how that all works out. I think see what the work schedule looks like and all that kind of stuff. And, maybe if my presence is required in the booth, I'll do the 100 or something, and go do the ride and have a good time, but maybe not push myself that far. But maybe if I'm not in the booth, maybe I'll give it a go again. I have a whole laundry list of big dumb events I want to go do.
Okay. All right. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that it hasn't shattered your your ideals about riding and even Unbound, right? Because that can easily happen. You think, God damn, mud takes me out. What the hell? Was it the mud, Travis, in the end? Was it the mud section? You think that that was the killer? Like, if that mud section's not there, have you imagined this yet? If that mud section's not there and you're able to ride it like normal, do you finish?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think 3 weeks ago I'd probably finish. I think if I don't show up at the expo, I maybe finish. At least give myself a lot better shot.
Yeah.
You know, I've looked at it a bunch, and like, I don't want to make an excuse because that doesn't help. But like trying to explain it to myself in my head, because I inevitably want to do it and finish. So why didn't I finish? And I didn't do 20-hour weeks leading up to it, but that's also not an option. So,
And you don't have to,
unless Josh lets me work half time.
Right.
You know, I can't just train 20 hours a week. That's not going to work. So what do I need to do to finish? You know, part of me says I'm at a higher level now than I was when I was training 2 hours a week. So now if I start training, I'll be at an even higher level for next year. But yeah, I think not being in the biggest thing I can come to is the standing around all day and being on my feet. And it was 23,000 or 24,000 steps or something that I had before, a day or two before. Yeah, that's probably why. It's not the mud. I didn't enjoy the mud. I didn't like the mud. If I knew there was mud, I wouldn't sign up for that. But yeah, it certainly wasn't if the race was riding through mud, that would not get me to sign up on the entry line, but or on the start line. But yeah, I would definitely do it again. You know, a whole bunch of other events. I think you guys might do a podcast about one of them. So that one's probably number one on my list of other events to do now. Try to go see if I can ride it, whatever it is, 12,000 feet.
Yep, 105 miles, 12,000 feet of climbing.
Not as much mud, usually.
That's actually, I can guarantee that. It's you can have it be actively storming in Leadville, and just the sandy nature of that soil means that, you know, you might be riding in terrible grit and be soaked and freezing, but it's not going to stick to your tires.
Yeah, I had the only real ride I've ever done there. The marathoners probably know it better than the mountain bike side, but Mosquito Pass. So we rode that. My buddy Paul that came with me, I told him we have to stop riding together because we do a lot of dumb stuff on bikes. But we rode from Breckenridge to Leadville on gravel bikes over the Mosquito Pass, or the Highway of Frozen Death.
Oh, cool.
This is what it's called. And had a thunderstorm below us, which was a frightening experience, to say the least. So hopefully,
I'm sure
I do that won't happen.
Yes, hopefully not. I think that's a good place for us to go ahead and close up, Hottie. You think?
Okay. You want me to, or are you gonna?
Yeah, I think that it is. I think you got the close.
Okay.
Or the start of the close.
All right, Travis. Well, I say it was still a successful mission. I mean, I got a lot out of it, like hearing from you and learning about your marginal gains. I hope the listeners did too. Anybody considering Unbound or some type of gravel event like that, some extreme event like that. I think there's a lot there for us to take in and learn from about your setup and your adventure. So we look forward to seeing you back at Unbound one day, and Fatty and I welcome you with open arms to Leadville. We have 150 episodes of show. Should you need any background on that event, feel free to start digging in there. And, of course, if you have any questions you just want to ask, just go ahead and ask us directly. We're happy to answer those. Hey, folks, if you have any questions about anything covered in this show, or you want to give Travis your words of congratulations, or, hey, stick with it, or anything else regarding this fine show, you can find all our episodes at marginalgainspodcast.cc. You can also call or text the Marginal Gains hotline, 317-343-4506. Got a question, comment, or idea for this show? Call or text that number and tell us what's on your mind.
And as a reminder, this podcast can be found wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, there's a million others. You'll find links to all the ways you can subscribe over at marginalgainspodcast.cc. Travis, take us home.
Everyone, thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with more Marginal Gains.